Hi, everyone. I'm Karen Osterheld. It's my pleasure to introduce my friend and colleague, Ellen Glazerman. I've known Ellen a long time. She's the executive director, as you know, of the Ernst Foundation and director of University Relations for the Americas for EY. I actually started my career at EY, but I'm so old it wasn't called EY then. It was called Arthur, yeah. Ellen also supports a variety of initiatives in the Office of Public Policy of the firm, Global Diversity and Inclusiveness. And she also is the former director of campus recruiting. So I honestly could not think of a better person to have to lead off this conference today. She's done campus recruiting a number of times in her years at Ernst & Young, so she really has a vision about the type of person that they're hiring. She also, Ellen and EY have an amazingly direct connection to Bentley. As Gloria mentioned, a number of years ago, we worked with the Boston office of EY to apply for a foundation grant. We were like so excited when we won. The grant was for $400,000, but what's really interesting about the grant is that through alumni giving and the match that the firm does, we've actually been given, the university's been given over $700,000. So it's a very, very significant effort of partnership between us and the Boston office. To be honest with you, I was personally involved in this, and there is no way it would have happened without their support, because we wrote the proposal, but they worked with us to help us write a winning proposal. So there's no way, it was a true partnership, and for me it was extremely exciting because my whole career has like come around right back at EY again. As Gloria said, the money supported a lot of curriculum innovation in the GB 112, 212 course sequence, but it has done a number of other things. We have tutoring for our Summer Transitional Education Program. We also have a GB 112, 212 tutor who sits in our ACE lab and works with our students. It supported some of the actual tutors in the ACE lab beyond that, and it has also just supported a new pathway for our freshman education, which I think is an amazing thing. The other thing you may not know, because we all go and do our own thing, is that in this class, GB 112, 212, EY provides us with professionals, typically senior managers and partners, who come in once a semester and teach curriculum. We don't let them come in and just say, okay, come work for EY. We actually give them curriculum to teach about things like what is the role of an auditor, that they can tell the students a whole lot better than we can. I was intentionally brief today in introducing Ellen, but I want to say that, my work with Ellen, you should know that she is truly a champion for the academic world. She is all about what we do, and everything she does in her work is a partnership between EY and us. So please help me to welcome Ellen Glazerman.
Thank you so much. I'm truly honored to be here, a little intimidated to be in front of a room of researchers, but it's really exciting because our work with Bentley was all about the future of education, meeting the future, and you were really cutting-edge educators. So it's exciting to be here at the precipice of another big change, and I think it ties into what we're doing. So what I'm going to do, Tony's going to help me. I'm going to kick it off with a video, because part of the future is we know that students like to learn everything with video. I am old, so I don't always get it, but I made it a short video, and then we'll talk. little context. So we have a business line, a service line that, I'll talk to it, maybe? Here we go. Okay, called People Advisory Services, and I know some of you do research in some of these areas. There's lots of information from them on the web if you want more data for either your research or in your classes. But before I start this and pick up on some of those facts which are a little intimidating and scary, jobs going away, things like that, I have a few caveats when I have this conversation. The first one is the reason I don't pass out the data is this is what we see today. Hello? Where's that? I don't know what you're. Can you hear me if I talk? Nobody ever has.
You need to have that on for the recording. Oh. I'm in front of the other one now.
Okay. Oh, those lights? Like that. He's going to turn that stuff off. Okay. So these are the facts today. We get asked all the time, what should we teach? How do we prepare people? What's the right answer? And the truth is, we don't know. That's your business. That's not our business. What our business is, we will share with you. And then we expect universities to respond based on their resources, their priorities, their talents, and we will share it at this point in time. So I reserve the right that the world could change tomorrow, because in corporate America, it can and it does. But this is our commitment to higher ed, is we will kimono open, share everything we know so that you are never at a disadvantage. That's how we believe in partnering, is we have to tell you what we know so that you can do what you know best. So that's one caveat. The other thing is there are no answers, so I apologize. And the third thing is, when we're talking about this, because we're in the middle of this change, everybody's experiencing it differently. Depending on where they sit in the world, in our case, in the firm, their rank, their geography, their role, they will experience it differently. So sometimes I share what we're seeing in terms of analytics and technology, and they say, I talked to 3 of my ex-students, and they don't see this. That's very possible. But they probably will tomorrow, or next week, or in 4 weeks. So I just want to give you a little context. So I was asked to talk about the professional of the future and what we're seeing. We have, going back to contextual video, this has everybody up at night. We're thinking about it. We've had work streams. Every business I know is in the same place. So I will share EY. I don't know any company that's not doing the same thing, trying to figure out where we're going. But one of the things I want to say, when we look at jobs that are going to go away, we also believe that new jobs will evolve, and we don't know what they are. And we firmly believe, as a professional services firm, that the role of human interaction can never be completely replaced by machines. And we're all about, one of our expressions is, the better the question, the better the answer, the better the world works. And we deeply believe that. And so if you're always striving to get the better question, that's not something that machine learning can get to, because it's all something that hasn't existed before. So just so you know our perspective, we believe that our profession is going to be strong and successful and very different. The other thing we believe is we don't know how it's going to be different. So if you look at, this speaks to all the disruptors, the demographic changes, technology. You all know this because you teach it. But it's this quote at the bottom that really brings it all together for me. We are preparing and hiring students for jobs that do not exist, using technologies that have not been invented to solve problems that haven't been identified. And we have recruiters who have been out of school 5 years doing that, because that's how it works. Well, it's hard. And you're in the same position. You're trying to figure out how to help students walk into this world. But that is our reality. And I think to the points we heard earlier from Tony and Gloria about continuous learning, constant evolution, that is the world. So if we look at the mega trends and some of what's happening around here about the job displacement, there are some other interesting components. So we've heard about the millennials, and they don't like to stay still. Gen Z, who you now have as freshmen, I believe, are in a different place. They're back closer to the boomers. It's like, oh, great. The 16-year-olds are my people. But they're looking for a little more stability, but they're doing this. They are true digital natives, so they're doing it in a very different context than we did. This point about employees really want a purpose. And I saw this for years. I'm the one person who has not-for-profit in my title at EY. And it's true, I run a 501c3. And at the end of busy season, if you don't know about auditing, that's when people are completely burned out and hate the world. I would get a stream of people coming in and saying, I'm going to leave the firm, and I'm going to go work for a not-for-profit because I want to do good. Excellent. What kind of good do you want to do? Well, I thought I would do accounting. Okay, so you're going to do exactly what you're doing for the same amount of hours and a third of the pay. Excellent. Alternatively, if you like what you're doing, you can continue to do it and take the outcome, the money, sit on a board, be an advisor, give money. There are lots of ways to do good, but this idea of purpose and meaning is incredibly prevalent today. And companies need to be cognizant of that if they're going to keep people. One more trend, we saw this. This issue of dealing with this technological change, innovation, it's really not optional. We started this journey of especially speaking to schools about 3 years ago about what we were seeing. And I could physically see faculty doing the calculation of, okay, if I retire in 3 years, do I have to? It's here. We're having conversations about blockchain. There are schools in parts of the world that are using blockchain for examinations to ensure that the right students are taking the exam. That's today, that's now. And that's not in a Western economy. The other thing to understand is if you're going to bring people into this world and give them completely different jobs, all the structure around the job, because you're a complete business school, all of those roles, HR, IT, that also has to change because they are working in a different context. They want different things. You need to evaluate them differently. You need to reward them differently. So every piece of this, org design, is very, very prevalent. And it was interesting when I was talking to our people advisory services thinking they were going to the big, Google and Facebook. And they do that, but they're also doing some big universities. Universities have figured out that the business model for higher ed is changing incredibly. And what do we do about that? So this is really for the researchers out here, also so you know how we're approaching it. Our research shows that there are 7 levers that you're playing with when you're trying to adopt this in an internal organization. For us, we have a Gantt chart that talks about when we're really focusing on each one of these. It's not one answer, it's an evolution. But as Gloria said, it has to be top of mind, and you have to have leadership focus. So we are clear on our purpose, that first one, building a better working world. And what's different from when I started in business, you said things like quality is very important, and you remember that because it was on your t-shirts and stuff. When we sit and make decisions about we're going to change this way of doing tax, that means a number of jobs are going to go away. What does our commitment have to be to society if we're not hiring in the same rate? So it goes now, our purpose goes into every single business decision we make. And that's a different way of doing business. So you can see, this in a lot of areas. Mind clarity, instead of being directive as a mentor and a leader in the firm, what you should do is take this class or get this engagement. We don't know what you should do because we don't know what's going to be different. So it's helping coach people. Who's the professional you want to be? And what will that look like? And what experiences do you think you need? Here are some places where I got that experience. So it's a very different approach. All right, so down to business. What are we going to do? This is not very sexy, but this is at the baseline. We think globally, everybody we hire needs to have skills in the following 3 buckets, and I'll go into them in more detail. Leadership, body of knowledge, which is domain knowledge, accounting, supply chain, whatever, and the emerging technology, and then mindsets. And that will be the same. It doesn't matter your role, your rank, or your geography. The mix will be different. Coming out of school, you are not going to be deep in all your leadership skills. And in certain roles, you need much more technical knowledge. But these 3 buckets should be checked, we think, for every role in the future. The other thing that's going to be very different for us is when you think about professional services firms like EY, you think about the triangle, the pyramid, the up-or-out model. We hire a whole slew of people in the beginning, and they do really horrible work for 2 years, and they either leave or they get promoted. Yes, I'm not an accounting major, not a tax person. I was a fundraiser by background, and I came in and everybody said, oh yeah, you come here, it's great, you do it 2 years, you get to be a CPA, it's horrible work. Why are we doing that? Well, it turns out that isn't the best way to do it. And we are seeing some people in the traditional workforce, but some of that really mundane work, that's going away. And it's the young people who hate doing it now when they say, I don't want to do that again, we say, okay, write a program to do it for you. And those are the people who are doing it. And it's kind of cool. They have to know enough that you've taught them that they can think through what that program should do. So you need the complementary skills. We'll talk more. But now, instead of just that model, we have 4 parts of the workforce. We have this traditional up or out. We have a virtual workforce, which are the managed centers, the offshoring, people who just get a task, they do it, they all sit together, it's great. There's the contingent workforce. Tony talked about that, the gig economy. This is very big now. We have thousands of people in our gig workforce. We have a marketplace called EY Gig Now. We have clients who are interested in buying the marketplace. It's a wonderful way. So, you know, dragging boomer hat on says, what about healthcare? What about, you know, how do you know? But working mom says, for so many of my friends who are Wharton MBAs and Harvard MBAs who are using all of that fabulous knowledge to direct which music class their 3-year-old should be in, this is a great way to use that energy. You come in, you do that work while your kids are at school, you go back, and it uses all of your knowledge and experience. So there are a lot of people who can play in that gig economy. And then the 4th piece of the workforce, and this exists, is the digital. Those are the robots. We have robots in all of our practices. They have different roles, and it's evolving. So we are piloting in the US, drones doing inventory. That was the other big audit thing. Oh, when I was a first year in the snow, I climbed up the thing and I got all dirty. You know, if a drone can do it, yay. And that saves you a lot of time and money, not to mention the dirty clothes. But we're also seeing these robots show up in, it's different from the robotic process. These are true robots who are part of the workflow, virtual reality, things like that, really helping clients to see that future that they want to create. It's important, we make a point of it here, I'm going to say it a few more times. This also came up in Gloria's remarks. Diversity and inclusion becomes even more critical. So you have people who have very different work experiences, very different educational backgrounds, very different ethnic or geographic or whatever kinds of backgrounds, introvert, extrovert. You have to get the best of all of these workforces if you are going to be a single functioning entity or a single functioning team. So diversity and inclusion is much more complex and a critical element of business. So leadership. These are the basic skills you know. Sometimes we call them the soft skills, except we think they're really hard. This is agility, business acumen. This is the asking the tougher questions, the critical thinking. And we expect people to be leaders as business people, as client managers, as individuals. So you have to have personal leadership. And again, it's going to come in different amounts with different amounts of responsibility as you mature and have different roles. But that's that first bucket we talked about. We ground all of it. We have a leadership model. It's grounded in our values, so it's consistent in what we tell people we want them to do, and then we're evaluating them against that. The body of knowledge is the big when we started these work streams, this is what got everybody all in a knot. Because what you need in client A, the analytics you need to do an audit at Facebook are very different than the analytics you need to do Susie's Candy Store down the street. And so what are those skills? We talk about those skills in two groups. One is the domain expertise. Auditors need to understand audit. They need to understand the research, the theory, how decisions get made, what they need to do to solve clients. The same for risk and fraud and supply chain and consulting skills. Students still need that. But in addition, they need to do it differently. Everybody is confronting huge amounts of data today. Everybody is. You are when you do your research. And it's interesting, when I talk to faculty, they say, well, I don't have anybody who really can do analytics. Except that's kind of what you do when you do research. So it's kind of why you're as successful as you are. Because it's understanding how to go through data, understanding what's good data, prioritizing your data, how to clean the data, how to sort the data. And every firm, I can say for sure, we don't care which program they use. I hear that from all of our competitors. But they need to know how to confront data. They need to know the realm of possibility. Do I need to find a technical expert in whatever it is, because here's the answer I'm trying to get to for my client? They don't need to program necessarily in a particular language to get a job, although some roles need some languages. But everybody should understand the thinking behind programming, because they will work with programmers. And we're programming new things all the time. It's no longer you go somewhere in a room and do something with cards and, you know, it's a horrible experience. Now it's the way you think about solving problems. And it's interesting, as I talk to faculty, some people teach Excel like a spreadsheet, and some people teach it as a computer language. If you teach Excel as a computer language, you've given students a much bigger tool than it's, you know, fill in the squares. And I'm a fill in the square. I learned Lotus 1, 2, 3. I got my MBA. They threw that out just to see if I could handle it. So it's thinking about things in a new way. Lean Six Sigma. That's how we plan our tax work. We use all of those manufacturing ideas to figure out our work. Artificial intelligence, cyber. It doesn't mean people need a degree in these things. They need exposure. They need understanding. And then the third piece, to me at least, is how you tie it all together. It's the mindset. Because you can't learn all of these new skills, and we saw in the video it doesn't matter, but by the time you're a junior, what you learned as a freshman, it's new skills. But what you can do is have a mindset about it. So an analytic mindset. This is the approach to all that data. How do you extract, transform, load, know that you have to, think about quality of data, sources of data. And even if you're not going to do it, can you have a conversation with a data engineer to make sure that when you give a result to a client, you know, it's relevant information. Innovation mindset is dealing in this world that's changing all the time. How do you fail fast? How are you agile? How do you think about new ways of doing it? Who do you bring onto your team who thinks differently? How do you really move from A to Z in a way that you've never conceptualized before? So a mindset that says you are open to that. The single biggest cost that we hear about in higher education today is the mental health centers around the country, because students don't have the resilience, because they don't know how to fail. Well, innovation is all about failing and getting up and doing it again. But you have to do the cost benefit so you don't fail to the point where you bring the company down. You want a little fail fast and keep going. And then this third thing, this to me is that tie, that's the diversity. Global mindset is an openness, approach, there's an intellectual, a social maturity component to how do you understand all the different perspectives at the table? How do you make sure your table has all those different perspectives? Because you are now having these serious, think about the extreme auditor personality and then the extreme innovation personality. If you don't know how to bring those best ideas together, you are going to have a really horrible meeting. But you're not going to get to results. So this inclusive leadership, the respect, what questions do you ask? How do I understand where you're coming from? and what you might be bringing and what glasses you're looking through to see it that way, so that we all at the table can learn from each other. So those are the mindsets, and they're really important. So when you talk about all of this and all of these changes, what ends up happening in this next slide, it's sort of a series of slides because it's trademarked, but I kind of did it. But this really talks about the cultural change. So historically, when you thought about accounting firms, professional services, you thought about the suits, right? White shirt. When I first started fundraising in accounting, and I come from the very liberal arts, I could tell the different firms based on the ties, really. And then they started merging, which I felt about that the same way I felt about the Lotus Excel thing. But it's a very specific way of thinking, and you think about hiring people who come from that suit way of thinking. And then when you think about we're in a world of digital evolution and innovation and blockchain and fintech, you really think about the genes kind of, going over to computer science somewhere and those guys who haven't showered in 4 weeks and they have flip-flops, and that's when they're going to their interview. Karen mentioned I oversaw recruiting in the late 90s, early 2000, and we were doing these big ERP implementations, and we were hiring kids. The recruiters all had suits in the back of their car, so we could bring them in. We knew they were really smart, but to get them in the front door, we had to dress them up a little. That's the old world. The new world is really a world in which everybody wears whatever brings their best self to work, because you're not one or the other. We all have both. We need to explore and bring out both. We need to cultivate both sides of our brain. And we have to have a workplace that is conducive to everybody bringing their best self and doing their best work. So we, Ernst & Young, Karen, I'm sure you thought you would never see the day, have a dress policy that is a jeans-friendly dress policy. So our leaders wear jeans, often jeans with suit jackets, but jeans, because we want people to feel comfortable. No longer does it matter how senior you are. It's not the partners teaching the innovation to the first-year staff. We're all developing it together. So as long as your client's not offended, you should dress appropriately. In fact, we got into some trouble. We do most of the work in Silicon Valley, and our guys went in there with suits, and nobody wanted to talk to them. So it's really an open environment, and why that's important from a work perspective, this collaboration. So if you think about it, you can't do product innovation successfully and on an ongoing basis unless you understand the risk of making that investment or doing that work or changing that brand. And you can't be a finance expert if you don't understand blockchain, because people are paying in Bitcoin. And how do you know your position? And if you're going to spin a business off and you can't evaluate your, we talk about goodwill, but now there's this brand that's on social media. And you need new ways of understanding that and putting amounts around that so that you can get the right value for either your spin-off or your acquisition. So that's what this is all about, is in the future, in summary, what we're doing is looking for people with all the aspects of leadership, really strong technical skills, both in the domain traditional knowledge and the emerging technologies and ways of thinking. And then with these three kinds of mindsets that bring all of this together. So that's our commonality based on our values and our purpose, so that we know when we sit at a table and a client gives us a problem, we're heading at least generally in the same direction because of that shared value and purpose. So any comments or questions?
Time for a question or two.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I'm Amy from the Human Center for Financial Services. Have you found that you change your core list of schools as business model and the culture changes?
So I said we do everything openly. There's discussion about changing our core list of schools every day. And I think we may evolve to that. At the moment, we're not. One, because we're still, I said everybody's experiencing it differently. So we need people with traditional backgrounds today, might be different from June. Our leaders are seriously pushing us to change our core list of schools. So the other thing that I will say here that could probably get me fired, so I encourage you to please keep it to yourself. Big organizations, and I was talking to some people at McKinsey about this too, part of the reason we work with the schools we work with is because of the relationships, right? If you educated me and I'm successful, you must do a really good job. So there are elements to how you choose your school that are a little more complex. We all look at how many people you get, at what cost, how long they stay, how well they do, and we look at what they're teaching. I think what we will see, though, is those schools that stay with a very traditional curriculum where, you know, finance is here, and technology is here, and analytics is here, will be supplying fewer people to big companies. Because I don't think the students are going to be able to compete. I think they're going to come and be completely overwhelmed. It's interesting, we had at a global meeting, we had a big conversation, and the overwhelming sort of major, if you will, was we need to hire more good, smart people, GSPs. How do you find GSPs in a university? But that really, to me, speaks to this need for smart, integrated thinking. Good? All right, enjoy the rest of the day. Oh.
Ellen, is a very small token of appreciation for our Research Council and all of us here. Thank you very much for your comments and being with us today. So unfortunately, Ellen now has to catch a plane.
I have to do this again in another state.
Thank you very much again.